stayed at, the Elephant Head Resort or Ranch, because we were driving, we didn't realize how long it would take to like get to the border and get to Yellowstone or somewhere, I don't know. But it was made by, it was all built by Buffalo Bill Coyote's niece. When we woke up in the morning, we were like, wow, this is cool. But the lady gave us a deal on the place that night. It was, we came in straggling in at 10 o'clock at night, and she was worried that we would hit animals, and we said, well, actually, that's why we were going so slow, is because elephant, moose, and things are in the road.
You do not want to
in front of
run
us.
into a moose or a bison.
No.
Oh, man.
Man,
They take out.
They would have told us.
Kinda ticks them off.
Yeah.
Or they take, oh, they are. Well, you know, it's so funny because, you know, like in Yellowstone and all the lodges, they will say at every entrance, beware the bison when you walk out that door, because, and people do crazy things.
Oh, we saw
They come right
ridiculous
through the
things. People doing
campsites, too.
selfies with a bison. I mean, like
these
getting
are
spooked.
huge animals that will
Yeah.
psych you
Oh my
out
gosh.
without even thinking twice.
Yeah.
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 Well, that's all right, people get out of their cars to go get pictures of bears too, so.
I know. When we were in,
Sometimes they get back
Glacier,
in their cars.
I remember.
Sometimes.
We were in a jammer, doing a jammer tour across the Sun River, whatever that was, up and over the pass.
Oh, yeah,
And-
Highway to the Sun.
Yes, and so we were in this jammer, and the guide was like, I can't believe these people. They all stopped, they got out of their cars, the bear. It's like, if there's a small bear, there's a big bear next to it.
That's right.
He's not gonna be, she's
Whenever
not
we
gonna be
saw
happy.
Mama Bear, Krog just, he had his bear spray ready, and we were just like, okay,
Yeah.
there's a mama somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, stay
Yeah.
out. But it is a beautiful piece of country.
Oh, goodness.
Ready to go back?
Yeah. Trying to figure it out.
I know. Well, and then if you go all the
Well, I
way
took
up.
pictures for you guys, I was thinking of all of you, because there was lessons learned there, and things we saw, yes, Jackson's only 10,000 in population, but they're doing it, a lot of things right. So I was gonna write up my notes.
modern classic. Rich people
I have a lot.
I know, because there's a lot of Not the rest of the state, or parts of the state.
And who can beat the shootout, you
Okay.
know, in Town Square, every night, 6 o'clock. Our Town Square is the same size as our Sylvester Park, you know.
And they have a shootout.
Yeah,
Cool.
it was fun.
See, we could have a shootout in Sylvester Park every
Well,
night.
my wheels were spinning. It brought people in, families, and then they all went to restaurants and spent more money.
Mhm.
We did. And free parking.
You know, if you didn't
They have 7 restrooms
Yeah.
within their downtown.
Wow.
7 restrooms.
That's nice.
Mhm, they were, very clean.
When you go to a tourist town, you know, they cater to it. And so, I think we could do a lot more to attract tourists. We can even have a tour bus to, you know, drive down to Boston Harbor and, you know, see the
A
sand.
lot of ideas for private entrepreneurs to
Yeah.
take the
It is
reins.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great. It's good to travel and learn what other places are doing. Take little bits and pieces from different places.
Hi, Michael.
It did, but then.
Oh, no, we're eating. Sorry about that, Michael.
All right. You had a nice little nap, actually.
Yeah,
That's what he claims.
I did. Took care of Vice, got a cup of coffee, and I just kind of dozed for about 20 minutes.
Good for you. That just rejuvenates you. Little nap and coffee.
Doesn't seem to go together, but it worked.
good seats still available. Hi, Jewel. Watch it. There's a, your behind is now being filmed.
Oh, is it? I'm in the, I'm sorry.
I appreciate it, Joel, but I don't think that's the view we want.
That's not the one you want.
I don't think so. They actually have staff sit there.
Doesn't get out much. You gotta explain this to him, he doesn't get out much.
Well, we can start now.
I did find it after you told me it wasn't clear. Yeah, it's like, I went through every single attachment, but I missed that one.
Or you can go out and push the green button.
I know which was.
Either way.
That's impressive.
The glass broke all over somewhere on the halls and then cleaning
We could say that we cared about it.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Economic Revitalization Committee meeting. And I want to check in with our committee members about the agenda this evening and also consult with staff and Mr. Cade about order of things. I don't, Michael, you're welcome to be here the entire night. But we can set up a cot.
I usually, I can sleep sitting, so.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
But I know, I'm assuming that you're here specifically for the development roundtable.
Yes.
But would love to have you here and stick around for the draft community renewal plan.
Glad to be here.
Okay,
Seriously,
we'll
thank
hold
you.
hostage for that item.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's okay with committee members and staff, we could just put the economy chapter last.
Yeah.
Do that last.
Good.
Is that okay? And then Michael can
Thank you, Mike.
maybe
Yeah,
see his
appreciate it.
family
Yeah,
tonight.
appreciate it. My time is your time, however, so I want to make sure you're doing, it's your resource.
Glad you're here. So,
We also have Lorelei standing by for item 4A,
Okay.
our conference call.
So is that an hour later?
I think in just a couple minutes here. Can we be sure that she's standing?
She may be sitting.
All right.
So, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to approve that change to agenda and also the fine minutes from our meeting on August 25th.
Excellent,
Second.
great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we've got approved minutes. We've got an agenda. And Keith, how do you wanna handle this, the first piece, the renewal plan. Did you wanna actually walk through a few things? What did you wanna do?
Kyle Lorelei, get her on the line, and our hope this evening is to make some decisions about how we move forward with the public participation process associated with moving towards a community renewal area for our downtown, and then to talk about the RFP process or the RFQ process and how we might want to continue forward with that. Certainly Michael can help out with that as well as Lorelei.
Hi Lorelei, can you hold on one just a moment?
Yeah, sure thing.
Hi Lorelei, this is Keith, and you're here with the CERC committee.
Hi, CERC committee.
Hi,
Lorelei.
Can you hear us well?
I can hear you well, and I'm coming through okay?
Loud and clear.
Excellent.
We were just getting started, and we were just sort of laying out our next steps for this evening, and what we hope to come away with is a sense from the committee how we move forward with the community renewal area from a public participation perspective, and then how we might move forward with this RFP or RFQ process. So those are our two desired outcomes. It would be good if we could identify any shortcomings as far as information needs go. I think those are our major objectives for this evening, at least related to this particular item. All right. We have your PowerPoint presentation. We'll have that up here momentarily as soon as I go back through the. Wrong computer, jeez. Wow, that's fun.
Oops. Looks like I'm in the corner.
Don't sit on wall.
On the box there.
Hang on here, I'm just getting your presentation up. For some reason, my computer decided it needed to reboot.
So just, Keith, for your and the group's information, that presentation is just a really quick overview of decisions that have been made to date on the CRA. So it should be a review for everybody. And I'm not sure how necessary it is to go through it. I'd be more than happy to do that. I just wanted to provide it in case it was helpful context for the conversation to remind us of what we have and have not decided and sort of what the next questions are for resolution. And the questions that need to be resolved are largely the ones that you all have already foreshadowed in your introduction to the conversation for tonight.
I think there's some value in going through these introductory slides. We do have some people here who aren't always with us. This evening, we have several members of the public here, along with Walt, represented by his digital camera. So let's just run through these slides real quick.
Okay.
So I'm on slide number 1, the introduction slide.
Okay, great. So advancing then to the next one off of the pretty picture, what this particular presentation does is review the decisions that have been made regarding community renewal. It's been a while since we've talked about a larger boundary in this context. So just to go back to that conversation, and then tee up a conversation around the next phase of public outreach and the role that this RFP process or RFQ process might play. Advancing.
I was just going to say, I think this is a good point to remind ourselves of what City Council spoke about at the retreat on August 30th, and the consensus that was there regarding moving forward with the CRA. Everybody unanimously agreed that a CRA was a beneficial tool for our downtown. It really was more how than why. as far as moving that forward. So I think we've got our marching orders from council to move forward towards creating a community renewal area for our downtown within the boundary that's been proposed so far. And now it really becomes a matter of how do we elicit public participation, or how much public participation do we need? So-
Yeah, and I'll add to that, the TAC conversation was also pretty clear in its direction that moving forward with the conversation on the community renewal area was a useful conversation to continue, and that people were in support of it. And that a lot of the questions about how to proceed revolved around the public outreach component of it, and when and how to bring additional people into the conversation. So I think we're hearing the same thing from multiple sources here. So then advancing on to the next slide, which has that big upside down red triangle. This is a slide that we've used in the past and is meant to be a reminder of the fact that through the isthmus conversation, we learned a lot about what kind of development people want to be seeing in the downtown, and what kinds of feasibility variables are affecting the private investment, the potential for private investment. So we went through a process of coming up with a set of guiding principles that are around creating a vibrant mixed-use area, around creating an extraordinary pedestrian environment. An important piece is that there were guiding principles around the elimination of blight and stimulation of reinvestment, points that are very directly relevant to conversation around community renewal. And also, the CAP was really wanting to think about the viability of the redevelopment proposal from an economic perspective. And I think all of those guiding principles are very useful when we start talking about the RFP process, because that is the kind of development and some of the words that might be useful to incorporate into that conversation. We came up with some interesting design concepts and did some benefit and cost analysis on those design concepts, again, for the purpose of trying to figure out what role a community renewal area might play in trying to move forward with implementation, and also trying to play around with sort of what are the parameters and variables that the community and others are likely to care about most when we get into the conversation about the community renewal area. And that leads us directly into that conversation and back into, well, we've had a fun time with the isthmus, now let's think about what we're going to do moving forward and how community renewal area can fit into that process. So the next slide then highlights the decisions that have been made to date. So the council and the CAC and the CERC committee have discussed these topics to date and have made some decisions. It's possible that some of them are up for conversation through the RFP process, but just to remind us of where we've been. There have been conversations about governance, about the boundary, about the properties of interest, which the community renewal plan needs to identify, and identifying and discussing an approach to condemnation. So the next slide then, which is number 5, Keith, just to make sure we're on the same page, is the boundary that the group has decided upon so far. And I recall that we were talking about this as the robot, I think, was the name we used for this boundary.
Lorelei, it's been renamed.
Okay, what is it now?
By unanimous consent, I believe it's now known as the thumbs up area.
The thumbs up area, that's
Yeah.
way better than the robot.
Yeah.
So it has an arm that extends up north along the west bay to encompass the reliable steel property, and you can see that the other portions of it includes all of the port property, and then on the southern and eastern boundaries it's contiguous with the downtown planning area boundary. Regarding the approach to condemnation, the Community Renewal Authority does give the city the ability to use condemnation for economic development purposes. And in discussions to date, the conversation has revolved around putting some limits upon the city's ability to use condemnation, some criteria that need to be met before the tool of condemnation will be pulled out of the toolkit. And that means that the discussion has been around 2 points. One, that the building needs to meet the statutory definition of health and safety blight, which is a pretty high standard. It's defined legally in state statutes. And you can refer to, I believe that he's included the RCW in the packet to provide the specifics on that. And that property also has to have been vacant and economically unproductive for a period of 5 years or longer. So that was a decision. And then the properties of interest that were discussed are those listed on slide 7. And I think that's going to be a big topic of discussion tonight, but to date, that's what's been listed. Reliable Steel, former health department property, the former Thurston County Housing Authority, the city-owned properties in the Isthmus, the Capitol Center, and Griswold. And I realize that there's not a slide in here for the governance topic, which is one that has also been discussed. Statutes provide a number of options for providing oversight over a community renewal area, and the discussion to date has suggested that the City Council would play the role of providing oversight for the community renewal area. The next slide, which is number 8,
Yep.
is meant to highlight sort of what the next steps are in terms of trying to get to a place where we have a community renewal plan in place and we have the public and private investment coordinated in a way that leads to a revitalized downtown. And it starts at the top with public engagement because it's so critical that there's a shared vision between the public and the private sectors and the community in general that can help to lead to a shared understanding of what investments are necessary so that council has the ability to prioritize those investments and really move into a period of implementation. So the point of bringing this slide forward again at this point in the conversation is to start to drive towards where and how do we want to engage the public. Understanding that the purpose of that engagement is to try to generate a shared vision that can ultimately lead to investment in properties, joint investment in properties of interest. So then the last slide, which is number 9, identifies a set of questions that are remaining to be resolved. And in order to move forward with developing an actual plan document that can be adopted. So that includes where and how do we want to go about engaging the public, and what role might an RFP or RFQ process play in making that happen. And then we do need to talk about properties of interest and make sure that we've got the right ones included in the plan, and that question is very integrally tied into the question around the RFP or RFQ process. And then we have a set of timeline questions about when the plan should be coming in front of council relative to the timing of an RFP or Q process and ongoing public engagement. So hopefully that presentation helps to sort of bring us all back up to speed and get us on the same page about decisions that have been made and where we're heading from here. And Keith, I'll turn it back to you to take us through the conversation that comes next.
All right, thanks Lorelei, and I'll turn it to the mayor, see where we want to go next.
No, first ask committee members if there's clarifying questions about what the information presented so far. Clarifying questions. In terms of this last slide, questions to resolve, is it okay to use this to the committee members as just sort of a framework of what we want to focus on in our discussion this evening? Can we spend a little bit of time addressing each of those in our discussion? Is that okay?
Let's try them.
Okay, and then I'm interested first if anybody has a preferred order, because I'm actually, and I'll just mention my own bias, I'm sort of interested in talking about bullet 3 first, just to touch base about that. But I don't know if that makes sense. So anybody want to, is there a rhyme or reason of what we want to work through
think that's a really good place to start the discussion, because it's definitely a question that I was hoping to get answered this evening is, what are we focusing on here? There's certainly some properties that we've talked about in the past, and whether or not we want to include them
Right.
in an RFP
Sort of.
or not.
And that, and again, in my thinking, is that determines a little bit how we approach the other questions, you know, what we're saying are properties of interest or sites of interest. Lorelai, can you hear me okay?
I can, yeah.
Okay, that's fine, just checking in. Okay, so if that's okay, then, should I keep that one, or you wanna, anybody wanna jump in on that one?
Well, let's take a 3, 2, 1, and then we'll see what's the last one. To start with the one you want to, then go to RFP process, looks like, then figure out what it.
Okay, so regarding, bullet 3, should I keep on talking about that, or do you wanna jump in?
Okay.
Please, jump in.
So I just found,
And actually, we have in the, on page 9 of the,
yeah,
what now has been sort of kicking around for a while, but it's page 9 of the ECO's summary document.
so I actually was gonna refer to that December document as well. I thought that there was some commonality between the input that we got from this ECHO report and then also from Jay Rich's correspondence, in that, now I'm losing my place, where Econ Northwest is telling us that, well, that there is a real interest in trying to focus our efforts. And in that discussion, then, they conclude by talking about some of the benefits of the isthmus properties. Their consultant recommendations, more detailed site or area planning would be helpful. So I'm interpreting that as meaning that we need to focus to create a workable plan that's necessary to describe the activities to be undertaken. And then, based on that and other discussion, we went to Jay Rich and asked him what needed to be in our plan and the level of specificity that would be required. And he lays out the requirements, but he concludes by saying that it would be very helpful, frankly, to be as clear as possible in what it is that we're trying to achieve, and to, again, to try to focus our plan and our efforts as much as possible. So I guess part of what's on my mind this evening was that in our last meeting, we had discussion about the RFP process, and in some respects, I felt that we were trying to use that process for site selection. We were suggesting that it was a design competition that would have public involvement, and that we would essentially open up the various properties of interest to proposals, and then based upon the response, and including the public response to those proposals and some look at feasibility, financial feasibility, we then would hone our list and focus in on a subset of the properties of interest to pursue. That's my interpretation, and I'm ready to be corrected in my understanding of where we've been, but I guess my thinking has evolved a bit since our last meeting, and I'm sensing a need to be more focused than than our discussion described in our discussion of the RFP, rather than opening up, what is it, 5 or 6 properties of interest plus other, that we try to limit our RFP process. And I think that does a couple things. One is that it communicates that we actually have our act together a little better, that we actually know what we're trying to achieve. And it's also helpful to the proposers, not just to give them some comfort, but also to help give them focus and not have them having to research this whole set of sites. I also think it helps us with the public in providing some clarity to our purpose. And I'm not suggesting that we need to pick one site and only focus on that, but I think by this broad palette of the entire CRA area, or even a set of some 6 sites, is too broad and is unrealistic to think that we're gonna get a good response. So those are my current thoughts, and I think I'm really anxious in hearing from you too about your reaction to those ideas.
Well, my initial reaction is you want to put out a broad enough area so that you will get proposals to begin with. You want this broad base. And I think what then happens is the wider net you cast, then you'll be able, the cream will rise to the top kind of thing. So that we will get a really good, I think that it will self-select to a certain extent, because the information that people have access to will be in certain areas, but I think, I don't wanna narrow it too much at this point. I don't know, I'm open for other suggestions, but my gut is leave it, have a broad base, and let's see what comes to us, because then, once we have those proposals, we can say, okay, because I'm afraid if we only have one area, maybe we won't get a proposal we can actually do anything with. I don't know. We are in trouble.
Let me elaborate a little bit. So, I think what, so Jay's email to me, which you sort of quoted from, Nathaniel, yeah. I think he's hedged his bets in terms of what his advice is at this point. I think that in order to make CRA work, I think, you get to a point where you have to be really clear with what you're doing, what the project is, what's gonna happen. And I think we're continuing to learn about how to build agreement within our community about how to zero in on the project and make that happen. And that's the part that continues to evolve, is the, how do we build strong agreement around a project that we'll implement. There's this other part though that I think Julie is addressing, and that's the larger reason and purpose for this community renewal area, and what's sort of built into why we have the boundary drawn the way that we do. There's an interest in making our downtown work, the whole thing work. And I think that folks are understanding that's the long-term project. It's not like one project isn't gonna do it. One approach isn't gonna do it. It has a lot of different pieces. But the CRA is there to jumpstart the economic development part, the development piece, I would say. It's sort of a combination of housing and other things that are gonna be critical to just making our downtown functional. Because we have a really significant gap between what's marketably, or what's viable within this market, and financial capacity of property owners and business owners. So there's this feasibility gap, and that's uniform to a downtown. Projects that we see are moving forward are self-finance projects, and those are a little bit on the leading edge of development. So how do we move things forward? And then there's this other category for me, which has to do with the isthmus. The isthmus, I really think is either an immediate opportunity that we're going to take advantage of and be a party to, or we're just going to let it sort of evolve however it evolves. I think there's a near-term opportunity with Captain Tower. And that's either gonna be there, and we're gonna move forward on that, or, you know, I think that the isthmus development process will sort of move more along with how the market moves generally, and maybe in a less integrated way with what happens with downtown as a whole. But there's some decision points around that. In terms of this agreement process in this whole area, I'm getting much more of a sense that we should be clear what we're trying to accomplish. We should be very inclusive in terms of the area and be, you know, specific about what kinds of properties we're interested in. And then I think from what Julie's suggesting, we should pose the question and see where there is real energy in terms of, you know, somebody that's willing to bring their own resources to the table and partner with the city to move something forward. Keith, did you want to jump?
Just wanted to add that one way of approaching that might be to reach out to the property owners that we've identified here and start probing them, you know, what's your interest? Are you interested in participating in this? If Griswold or Vine Street says no, then great, take it off. But if they express real interest in partnering with the city and participating in the RFP process, sure. They're all properties that we may want to consider at some point in partnering, and I don't know, why would we want to take them off the table if they're interested in at least exploring that possibility?
So let me try to respond to that question, why we might want to take them off the table. Let me start by making a distinction between the plan and the RFP. So I have no problem with a plan that's broad-based and lists all of our properties of interest. And as Rich suggests, allows for some flexibility and for some maturation as time goes on. And I'm paraphrasing heavily. But when it comes to the RFP, I think there is benefit in being more specific about what we're going to try to achieve. And your question is, why would you limit that list of sites? And again, I think first of all, one is to be able to demonstrate to the community, both the Olympia community and the development community, that there is some horsepower and some clear understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. And it's not a shotgun approach, but instead, we've got focus to what we're trying to achieve. And that, I think that gives us more momentum, more strength, and more power in moving forward. I think the other reason is that when I put on my developer's hat, which is not a good fit for me, by the way, but when I try to imagine looking at this RFP as it comes out and how I as a developer am going to respond to that, you're asking me, the city is asking me to do an awful lot of work on their behalf. And work that I think I should expect the city to have already honed this down to something that gives me more specific direction. You're asking me to look at multiple sites, to work with multiple property owners and financiers and decide where I'm going to focus and bring forward this. You're asking me to do a lot of work, a lot of heavy lifting. My sense is that that's our job as a city, as an owner, or as a jurisdiction, to give that more specific short list to the development community. I'm not suggesting only one site, but I do think that we also run into more complications once the proposals come in, whatever shape they may be in, of weighing one against the other when we've got apples and horses and oranges all intermixed together.
One of the things I suggested in the staff report, and maybe I wasn't clear if you didn't get to the attachment regarding the request for qualification process, I think that's a distinction that we need to make and we need to understand. For me, a request for proposal is we're asking for something very specific, related to a specific project with a specific scale. A request for qualifications, on the other hand, we're really asking for an interest. an interest in a demonstration of capacity. And I think that's where we are right now in this process, is looking for interest in capacity and understanding, as opposed to coming in with a specific set of plans. If we're gonna come in with a specific set of plans or request a specific set of plans, you're right, we need to narrow. We need to be focused. But if we're asking for qualifications, then I think we can be broader.
So let me just jump on it. I thank you for making that distinction, and I believe I understand that distinction. I'm not sure how that responds to the concerns that I'm raising.
Yeah, let me try something else, because,
Okay.
this, I keep learning from this process. It's really an amazing process for me. It's so different than any other, it's just a continuing learning experience. So, I think being clear about what we're trying to accomplish in our downtown is important. And we have, I think, strong agreement around things like wanting to increase our revenue base, stimulate the quality of development that is occurring in our downtown. We're trying to increase downtown vitality. We're looking to only complement and enhance what's there. We don't want to mess it up. We want to make it better. We're trying to close the feasibility gap for developers so that we can jumpstart development. We're trying to do revitalization. And we have a broad palette to work from. Part of the task is to get engagement from the private sector, to get engagement from private investors, to get engagement from property owners. And just like the state's Community Economic Revitalization Board approach, where there is a broad request for applications at any given cycle, and you do get apples and oranges, but you have very clear criteria that's based in the vision of what we're after, what we're looking for, where you don't worry so much about the extraordinary differences between the projects, one being a grocery store, the other being a manufacturing plant. You don't look at that. You look at what the alignment for your vision and what you're after in terms of the results. I think where we have some strength is agreement about what kinds of results we want for our downtown. Trying to get some excitement and interest from the private sector and putting proposals on the table that are real proposals that have feasibility, where somebody is motivated enough to put something together and say, we want to do this and we think it's possible. That's a good place for us to be. And it gives us quite a bit of strength and ability to pick and choose from competent, practiced, and experienced developers, and folks that are bringing things forward that are directly in alignment with what we're trying to accomplish. I think building public confidence, the public, I think by and large, they want to see pictures of what they're going to get. We have a hard time, we'll have a very hard time getting there unless we have a private partner. So I would really encourage following what I think is a good working model of something like the Community Economic Revitalization Board approach, where the criteria are really clear in terms of what we're after. And the invitation actually stimulates some excitement and gets people moving on concepts and ideas that can be visually depicted, and so that the public can say, oh, I can see how that would look, I can see how it would look, and I can see how it would fit, I can see how it would make our downtown, that area vibrant. But unless we put out some kind of invitation, I don't think we know enough in terms of what we need to. I would like to really push on closing some kind of deal on the isthmus. That's my own personal preference, because I'm concerned that a window of opportunity is closing there. I don't think that there's general agreement enough to say we should do that, without first seeing some real pictures about what it would look like. And that to me is the invitation that that's represented by the RFP. What do you folks think is reasonable? What can you bring forward? Very much on a curve board, unique economic revitalization board type approach. So does that answer any?
Well, actually, a lot of what you said, I absolutely agree with, and I think that what resonates the most with me is that we're having a really hard time communicating with the public and even our CAC about these concepts of what this could be, and that it is going to take a proposal and some renderings in order, and some spreadsheets, to explain to the public and to others what it is that this means, what these potential, or what these proposals are, and what the potential development might be. So I'm absolutely there, and I think that that is the strength of the RFP process, is that it helps, it takes this amorphous idea of public-private partnership with a closed feasibility gap and turns it into something that actually touches the ground that people can respond to. So I think there's alignment there. That's not my concern at all. I think there's real benefit in that. Again, my concern is that we've just opened the gates too wide to all sorts of different opportunities, and we haven't given the development community or the general public the guidance and direction that I think is our obligation. So we just have a difference of opinion as to, one, what the best approach might be, but also why that might be, and what the capacity or capability of the development community is to respond to such an open opportunity. Again, I think that we provide more confidence by narrowing our focus.
I don't agree, but in terms of providing more confidence, and so a couple of things that I respond for. I don't think we have a public problem or issue, or I think we have an issue with a fairly narrow group of stakeholders in the community. I don't think we've done, I don't think the broader public really has any understanding or has been approached. It's not on their radar screen. I think it's
but that's on our agenda to discuss this evening, is how do we approach the public?
Yes, and so we need to get there.
But so I think that my comment does lead into that. I think we're actually in agreement that the public is going to need something more tangible.
Maybe I can finish.
I'll let you do that.
Okay, so what you were saying was, if I understood you correctly, was we have a public problem in terms of this is gonna be too broad, and we're not gonna be able to be specific with the public about what it is we want to accomplish, or what we're trying to do with a larger RFP or a broader RFP. Do I have that right?
I think what I was trying to say is that the confidence issue is one not only for the development community, but for the broader public as well. That if we're just throwing open the gates and saying, here's this all of downtown, and the thumbs up area is, we want to hear what you have to say. It doesn't give guidance or adequate leadership, in my opinion, for either the development community or the broader public to buy into what we're trying to achieve.
So I want to respond, but you want to jump in first?
No, go ahead and finish and then I'll.
So I think you're making too broad of a stroke.
Okay.
Again, and so what I was meaning in terms of, I don't think we have a public problem yet in terms of understanding, because we haven't had public engagement yet. We have very narrow engagement from a few stakeholder groups.
Agreed.
Yeah, and that's all those are the only folks that have been at the table. And we actually have only a little bit of attention being given to this from property owners and developers. Yeah, so I think we need to get a different group to the table. And I think we're selling ourselves short by presuming, by, picking one site or narrowing the focus at this point, without taking that step of a clear articulation about, around the areas that we have, I think, strong agreement about. But taking that step of being very clear about what a CRA allows, what you can do with a CRA, but, in terms of the tool, where we're interested in those things happening, and why, what we want as a result. That's essentially setting the table, and inviting a broader group of people than we currently have to engage and participate and see what happens. I think that out of a broader process, we'll get some exciting things to happen. It's sort of like, I go to a couple of different places in the state as examples, but, it's like, I think one of them is Union Station in Tacoma. I mean, there wasn't a preconceived notion of what to do with that facility. It was starting with just making it available and getting a lot and getting some proposals. But it wasn't, saying we're going to do exactly this with it. It was really, sort of opening the door to a bunch of different options and opportunities. That may not be a good example, although, revitalization for the entire downtown there was, there was a search for sort of a keystone